Anybody got any question? Yes.
My name is Al McCrae with Tampa News and Talk.com. I see all these great presentations, and most of them are going to take about 40 years to implement it. And I've told Mark Sharp this many times. My problem is that I don't want to pay for something now that I might could use when I'm 92 going from the nursing home. And I know we do this for our grandkids and their grandkids, but it got to be a way, if you're going to tax me now, I want to ride now. And I know that's impossible. So there's got to be a way when you tax people to throw them a bone now as you roll the whole system out.
Well, actually, not all the projects are 40 years. Sunrail is going to be running much quicker than that in 2015, so that's close, and it didn't take that long. But I understand what you're saying, and this is about the next generation largely, and we do have to think about that. Just like I was a kid when the interstates, I remember the first interstate I saw under construction in Chicago when I was 7. And now we have a whole system that my parents' generation built. That's kind of what we do. So I don't know if there's a solution to that problem. Any other questions for the discussions we had? Yes.
Just a quick one. We heard one small reference to Amtrak. And when we're talking about multimodal, we've got a lot of different ways we need to look at moving people and what other sorts of things we have going here. I'd be interested in hearing what's going to happen with Amtrak and how that fits into the bigger picture as well.
This is probably a question on Sunrail or I would suspect All Aboard Florida. Amtrak shares the tracks or no? Yes. How?
Yeah, with the Sunrail system, Amtrak will continue to run its regular schedule. We're going to be sharing 4 Amtrak stations, DeLand, Winter Park, downtown Orlando, and Kissimmee. So they'll continue to run that. They're sharing the tracks. There's actually a lease agreement so that Amtrak is leasing the track time back from FDOT, so that becomes a revenue stream for Sunrail for FDOT.
Thank you. I think there was another question in the back. Yes. There's a mic right over here for you.
Thank you. Albert Rodriguez with Ambient Technologies. And there was talk in the past, in the days of high-speed rail, that at the stations, the problem was how do people get to the destination? And there was talk about setting up electric vehicles of various kinds that are easy to get access to and rent in an automated way. Is that anywhere in the plan?
I think that all the areas are looking at ideas like that. You're talking about like zip cars, things of that nature that you could rent for a short period of time. I think that is probably a shorter term thing that is on everybody's radar. It's being done in other cities. I think that all of us are looking at that and need to make that a part of it, because that is an important thing. How do you get to these facilities from your home?
Actually, downtown Orlando in the next day or so is announcing a short-term car rental, a car sharing program. Their FDOT is working with Hertz to provide that. Now that's going to be not an A to B to solve that last mile connectivity problem. It's going to be an A to A to give people who are transit riders the option to go across town to meetings or to make an appointment, but they need to return the car back to the original spot where they rented it. So that is going on in Orlando, but again, not a last mile connectivity, but a lot of last mile is we're working with Lynx and Votran to provide that connectivity. Lynx is rerouting some of its buses to serve our station, so we'll have Lynx service at all of our stations, Votran at the one station in Volusia County, and our funding includes enough money to purchase 16 additional buses for those services to provide that connectivity.
Okay, I think we're ready for Paul, and I want to assure him the MPO had nothing to do with sabotaging FDOT's presentation.
Well, I certainly appreciate the opportunity to be here today to discuss the District 7 FDOT vision for transportation in our Tampa area. So we're going to talk very briefly about our vision, how we view it. We're going to try to implement as much of this vision as possible as quickly as we can, and the challenges to implementing the vision. So what's different? Our vision basically is this for the DOT. We're looking at trying to find ways to use transportation to drive economic opportunity in the Tampa Bay area. The idea is to not only look at the possibility of adding new infrastructure, but how can we develop business clusters that will maximize the efficiency of our current transportation system that we've already invested in. The key is, on anything that we do, is we have to provide system reliability, because if you want to grow our economic base, we have to provide our businesses with the system reliability that they know that they can get their people, goods, and services from point A to point B efficiently and effectively. The opportunities that are going to help us get there, quite honestly, the Panama Canal expansion, which is going to be opened in 2015, and the Port of Tampa is going to be a huge opportunity for us. If you're familiar with the Port of Tampa, you're aware that the Port of Tampa is very much a bulk facility. They move very large items from the standpoint of phosphates, aggregates, oils, those type of facilities, and Tampa is looking to grow their container operations. Which is great, because if you're familiar with Florida as well, you know Florida is very much a consumer state. We consume far more than we produce. But on the same token, that's going to be a little bit of a problem for Tampa, because if we bring all these containers in, we need something to put in them to get them out of Tampa, so they're not going out, what we call them in the industry, dead. So we really need to work within our area to foster new business growth here, so that as Tampa grows the container business at the port, we can also continue to grow the export side of the business. Roughly for the state of Florida, of all that we consume, 40% comes through our various ports, whether it be the airport, the seaports, rail, and then 60% comes in from other places. And when I say other places, it's everywhere from Savannah, Georgia, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and as far away as Long Beach, California, which then gets put on a truck or a train and brought all the way across the country. Definitely not, excuse me, fighting a cold here today, so hang with me. Definitely not very efficient, and certainly it's costing the people of the state of Florida quite a bit more money to have to bring stuff all the way across the country like that. We really need to find ways that we can leverage the Port of Tampa, Tampa International, working with CSX. How can we do this to bring those products, goods, and services here, and then give them the ability to export stuff out to other areas of the country? It's going to take high-tech jobs that we need to promote and bring to Tampa, and it's going to cause us to create these high-skill, high-tech clusters around there to make this happen for us. We're fighting customer expectations as well. As I mentioned earlier, businesses need system reliability, but our people need mobility options. You've heard it previously with what's happening in Orlando right now. It's very difficult for us to continue to expand this, the highway system, just due to the cost of the continued expansion. People also want choices anymore. I always like to use my son as the prime example, as the millennial generation. They would rather be on their smartphones playing around while they're getting from point A to point B than they would driving the vehicle themselves. When my son was 17, he still hadn't got his driver's permit yet. And I had to look at him and say, okay, fella, you want to do these sports, you want to do this? Dad's done taxing, and you got to step up to the plate and start taking control of your own life here. But quite frankly, why is that important to us? It's a complete transformation from how a lot of us do our planning. As transportation professionals, we view the concept that everyone wants that individual freedom. Well, anymore, the millennial generation is looking at something and saying, hey, I'd rather have somebody else drive me. I'd rather do the various modes rather than have to drive myself, which changes how your population base looks and how that entire transportation system is set up and designed. So these are things that we really need to think about for the future. We have to work together. You've heard a great example in Orlando. This wasn't an overnight success that they've had in Orlando. Everybody from the state, federal, and local governments, as well as our industry, whether it be our consulting industry or our contracting industry, and the private sector, have stepped up to the plate to improve transportation in the Orlando area, and this is exactly what we need to do here in the Tampa Bay area. We need to look at our transportation system more regionally, and we need to figure out how that we're going to make these connections and work together to make that happen, to pool the limited resources that we all have to make Tampa and the Tampa Bay area the great economic power that it really can be. So this regional coordination is an absolute must, and as I mentioned, it's all about pooling those limited resources, because quite frankly, if you look at what the federal government's going through right now, I really believe that we as a state are going to have to be more self-reliant and less reliant on federal sources out in the future. So implementing this vision, as I mentioned, the traditional government funding is going to be more of a challenge. We're going to be looking to more of the public-private partnership models, as Orlando is already doing. We're going to be looking for ways to bring private investment dollars into the system, and it's also going to allow us to make these projects happen significantly quicker, as you heard Orlando also talking about. If we in the Tampa Bay area wait for the federal funding system to fund these projects, quite frankly, sir, I will be with you. I will be in the nursing home with you, and we'll be waiting for these things to happen. And quite frankly, that's not how Tampa is going to grow. That's not how we're going to become the economic power that we can be. We're going to have to start looking at alternative contracting methods. Design build is a prime example of that. There's other alternative contracting methods that we need to explore, and we need to make sure that those things are happening. And we're going to be looking at more private financed type facilities. We have one great example here it's ongoing, you may or may not be aware of, from a potentially private finance facility up in Pasco County. We have an unsolicited proposal within our department right now that's covering from US 19 on State Highway 54, 56, and they want to take that to US 301 as a managed lane facility. That corridor up in Pasco County is extremely congested, and the private side of our business thinks that there's a way to build this facility and make it obviously profitable for them. They would design, build, operate, and maintain the facility, only leasing portions of that corridor from the DOT, similar to what All Aboard Florida is doing. So these are some of the things that we need to start thinking about. We need to start thinking outside the box and figuring out how we can make these type of systems happen. Everything is all about, it's going to have to be customer driven, however. And when I say that, you need the customers willing to step up and pay what it's going to cost to make that happen, because the government financing side of it is not going to be sustainable long term. So in the Tampa Bay area, we're currently undergoing a managed lane study, or express lanes, as they're talking about on I-4, and we have a complete map, which we'll be seeing here in a second, that will be coming up, that talks about how we can implement managed lanes to help improve traffic flow. We need premium transit options, whether it be a fixed rail, whether it be bus rapid transit. Those are definitely systems that we're looking at that we can transition. We don't have to try to do this all at once, but we can transition maybe from a rubber tire system to a fixed rail system. But in the end, we need to look at how premium transit options can happen, and we need to make sure that we have smooth modal connections, not only for people, but for freight. Again, if we're going to be competitive in the marketplace, it's all about making sure that we can bring the businesses in, but those businesses need to know that they can get from the different modes successfully on time, and basically be able to move their product from point A to point B. A great example that the port is currently doing right now is the Green Rail Express that they've got going on, where they're going to be bringing products into the port, putting it on refrigerated train cars, and they're promising the folks up in the Chicago area a certain delivery time every week. That's a great example of smooth modal choices that's going to be helping drive in our economy in the area. As I mentioned, this is the draft version of our managed lanes program here in the greater Tampa Bay area. Obviously, there is a lot of work on that screen right there, to the tune of close to $5 billion. So you think your $2.1 billion project on the I-4 Ultimate is quite a project, which it is. That's what you're seeing on the screen here. If we were to build all that out, try to do it all out at once, which is not very realistic financially. So we're going to have to find ways to implement a managed lanes program here in the greater Tampa Bay area. We're going to have to find ways to finance all this, and we're going to have to figure out how we can implement it in stages so that it can be successful. Everything, no matter what we do, everything has to show success or the users won't continue to come back to support what we're doing. We're looking at bold, innovative technologies. If you haven't heard, the Tampa Bay area is going to be holding the first autonomous vehicle conference in the state of Florida, which is November 14th and 15th at the convention center. Why is that important? Well, quite frankly, technology is our future. We need to figure out how we can use technology to be more efficient and effective with the limited dollars that we have. It will allow us to change our land use planning and our design standards so that we can more effectively utilize those dollars. And quite frankly, it's also going to provide a new level of freedom for our baby boomer population. If you have an autonomous vehicle and as we all grow older, because I'm in that stage, I can say that as the reality comes that we're going to get to a point in time where either you're going to have to rely on your family to get you to those doctor's appointments and to maintain your freedom, or hopefully the autonomous vehicle will be there for us to make that happen. There's also a change in how we're going to use the methods to propel our vehicles. Everybody knows that oil is becoming a very precious commodity across the globe, and we're going to have to be looking at how we can be more efficient, effective, and quite frankly more green to protect that environmental component of what makes Florida great here as well. We're going to use things such as GPS. There's going to be things such as smart roads. In the bottom left-hand corner, that's a solar-powered roadway. And you're probably thinking, I really lost my mind. But actually, I was working with a company out in Idaho when I was out in Idaho that we got them a Federal Highway Administration grant. And they're very close to creating a truly solar-powered roadway that you would actually run on the solar panels. It would be creating electricity that could either be used to power the vehicle. You wouldn't need to paint road lines. And it still was able to create enough electricity that it could go back into the grid. Very, very high-tech, very unique type concept in a place like Florida that would be outstanding from the standpoint that we're known as the Sunshine State. Let's take advantage of our resources and be more green. And then there's other types of autonomous vehicles such as unmanned aerials, and those are the type of things that's going to really bring technology to the forefront, not only here in the Tampa Bay area, but in our state and quite frankly across the globe. So what are the challenges? As I mentioned earlier, the gas tax is really is unsustainable long term. People are driving less. We're trying to use more modal choices, and the miles per gallon that we're getting are increasing, and the propulsion methods that I was talking about are also changing. So while it's been a great backbone of our financial system for transportation for many years, we need to start finding ways to move to different funding structures. And quite frankly, I think it's going to be a user-based type funding structure. Our Florida Transportation Commission back in August had a workshop that is looking at how can we look at other funding mechanisms for transportation. I don't think there's been any real decisions made on that, but know that we are out front looking at possible changes in how we can fund transportation. As I mentioned, there's going to be changes in how we look at land use, patterns, traffic modeling, all due to how transportation and these changes evolve. Those driving expectations and patterns that I mentioned that the millennials are looking at are changing, and we also have issues that we haven't even started talking about with the protection of technology. You know, when you start talking about autonomous vehicles, it's a computer-based system, and hackers love to be involved in that. So how are we going to protect that? And then there's other simple things like what's the insurance industry going to look like? If you're not driving the vehicle, who technically insures the vehicle, and how does that play into it? All these things are going to be really discussed at the Autonomous Vehicle Summit. We're going to be talking about the technology, but we're really going to be focusing on the implementation of the technology. Even things such as the Howard Franklin that was mentioned earlier, that should be a 100-year structure. What are we doing to prepare that structure for autonomous vehicles in the future? I'm not saying we have the answers, but we need to start talking about this today so that we're prepared for tomorrow. And with that, I know that we're short on time, so I will give Jill the podium back, and I will be around for questions later. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to have a series of very short 5-minute presentations, try to get us back on track a little with local things. Lots of things are going on in the Tampa Bay area, and this is your chance to kind of get a capsule summary of what's happening, starting with Joe Lopano and the airport master plan.
I can't even say hello in 5 minutes. Well, good morning, everyone. It's a privilege to be here with you today, and I want to share some very, very exciting ideas with you in a moment. How do I advance this? Oh, I'll just use this. Okay, very good. Okay, so we have a master plan update that's required every 5 to 7 years. The last one was done in 2005. We just completed our master plan update recently. It's been almost a 2-year endeavor. In fact, our board member, Mayor Buckhorn, has been with us since that time. He remembers when we awarded the contract to the point now that we have a really exciting plan before us. They're required to ensure appropriate planning and funding strategies. It has had extensive input from all stakeholders, including our governor, board, airlines, and the public. And the plan was formally adopted by the board in April. And here's what the plan is based on. This is our forecast. Now, if you'll look right here, this is about the time of the last master plan, and the airport was experiencing significant growth. That world has changed. We will not see that kind of growth again. We've had a number of things that have happened. Number one is recession, a Florida real estate meltdown, the effects of the BP oil spill took us down 14% right here. And so our employment growth will not reach where it was earlier until 2016. The other thing that's happened is airlines are now consolidating. There's only really 3 big airlines. So it's a challenge for the airport. We have to find ways to diversify our revenue streams. We really can't count on 5 or 6% growth in employment, so I'm gonna show you some of the ideas we have for that. The other thing to note here is that the international growth is going to be fairly significant. We are pretty mature on the domestic side and very woefully underserved on the international side, and that's a priority for us on a go-forward basis. So the major findings were that the main terminal is nearing its maximum capacity. Now, one of the ideas would be, okay, let's build a new terminal. That would solve that problem, but that's probably not a good cost-effective way to approach this. The other thing is that our rental cars are at capacity today. I don't know if many of you know that we are the 9th largest rental car market in the country. We're the 27th largest airport, but we're the 9th largest rental car market in the country. We have to make sure that we have capacity so that people can come into Tampa, rent a car, and go spend money in our community. This is an economic development issue as much as anything else. Our curbsides and roadways are nearing maximum capacity. So one answer might have been, well, let's build more curbsides and roadways. But another approach is to understand why are they so congested. And long-term parking is at maximum capacity. What we found out is that the reason the roadways and curbsides are backed up is because the rental car center is right there. So people have to return their rental car and take their rental car out right across our roadways. The long-term parking was at maximum capacity. Well, guess what? The rental car companies occupy 2 floors of the long-term parking. And by moving them out, we gain $10 million a year in new parking revenue. By the way, how many people have parked at the airport today? Raise your hand. We do appreciate that revenue. Okay. The main terminal area needs to be decongested as soon as possible. What we found is that instead of building a new north terminal and spending awful lot of money on creating roadways and new parking garages, by doing some things a little bit smarter, we can stay within our footprint for the next 20-year planning period. Major sources of congestion are solved by moving the rental car. That's the rental car growth problem, curbside, roadway, and parking capacity congestion. And so here it is. And we talked earlier about what our vision is and what we can do to top what George Bean and the guys did. And I challenged our master planners. They came back to us with their first phase, and they said, okay, we're going to build another parking garage, and we're going to build another rental car center over here. And I said, that's really boring. That's not very imaginative. They said, yeah, but it's cheap. I said, it's cheap and bad. Go back to the drawing board and do something better than what George Bean did. And I think we're there. This calls for a $935 million first phase. It creates more than 10,000 jobs, and it's underway right now. So this isn't a regional plan that we're talking about and it's on the shelf. This is a plan that's happening today. The major projects are a 2.3 million square foot consolidated rental car center. So we'll move all of our rental car operations to the south, right here. And that does a number of things. It takes 8,500 cars off our roadways, okay, because these people have to come up and back to our main terminal. This is an area of congestion. What we have to do is move them away. Now you can get right off the highway and return your rental car, and we never interact with those 8,500 car trips a day. That'll be connected, we're gonna go back to the future and use George Bean's idea. That'll be connected by a 1.3 mile automated people mover. This isn't an idea that's being floated about. This is something that's been approved by the board in concept. The board will vote on the budget for this in November at the November board, and the design build contracts will be let first part of next year. So this is underway, and it'll happen by 2017. The other thing is we'll expand our transfer level right here, and we'll build out, and we'll create restaurants that'll look out on the airfields and look out on the airplanes and so on, and drive our revenues up, which I told you earlier is something that we have to do. The benefits of this plan: it removes cars and buses from the airport roadways and curbsides. So now buses can drop off down here. It allows rental car companies to grow, which is a significant issue for us. Adds 2,400 spaces to our long-term parking garage, so we regain that parking without expending any more money. And it includes a bus rapid transit station. So you could take, one of these days we'll get a nonstop bus to downtown Tampa. I know I've said this before, I got a nonstop to Zurich, but I can't get a nonstop to downtown Tampa. One of these days there's gonna be a bus that's gonna drop me off right here, and I'll get on this train and come right to the terminal. It's coming. Okay, so a little bit more detail on this. We will have the APM, automated people mover, will travel here. It'll be up about 85 feet in the air, go under taxiway J. We'll have to reconstruct this taxi bridge, go along here and stop first at the economy garage, which exists today. This is served with a busing operation. We'll get rid of all those buses, save the money, save the labor, save the environment, take those buses off the road, and those people can ride on the train. And then the next stop will be the Consolidated Rental Car Center, which will be spectacular. It'll be 4 floors. It'll have fueling capability on each floor. The rental cars can turn cars around in 15 minutes from the time someone drops it off till the time it's re-rented by someone else. Hugely efficient. And then, of course, a bus rapid transit station. But also, other buses off airport hotels can drop off there, and we take them off our roadways, and we decongest all of those problems. Ultimately, we'll also move our employee parking down here, which is up on the north side of the airport. It's a busing operation. We have to cross an active taxiway, which the FAA frowns upon aircraft-bus interaction. And so they kind of like this plan too. And so what happens is when you're done, we have about 15,000 people in this area between economy parking, employees, and rental car guys. So this is where transit-oriented development comes into play. We have to develop real estate at the airport to drive our revenues up, because we know our airline revenues are going to be flat. So we put a gas station down here so the rental car guys can gas up and return their rental car. Or if you're at the cell phone lot, you can gas up, get something to eat, wait at the cell phone lot. You could even pick your party up right here at this curbside. They could take the train down to the south. You just tell them, I'll pick you up at the rental car center. It creates another curbside, thereby reducing that congestion. We could build a hotel here. We could build office buildings here. There are a lot of opportunities. You could put a pet hotel down here for people who travel and have pets. This is a new popular trend. This whole parcel of real estate becomes enabled by this rail connection. And this is what it might look like after we build it out. Here's the Consolidated Rental Car Center. Here could be a hotel and an office complex and so on. So really great opportunities for us on a go-forward basis, but the important point to remember is this will be, first phase will be complete in 2017 to early 2018. This is what the automated people mover station will look like at the terminal. It will actually connect to the terminal in between airsides A and C. So you use shuttle bays for A and C. There's a smoking deck out there if you can envision that. When you leave today, go take a look. That's where this will be. So you won't have to climb any steps. You drop your rental car off, you get on a train, you get off that train, you take your rollerboard, and you're at the transfer level to go out to your plane. This is what it might look like on the inside. It'll be spectacular, 85 feet up in the air, great views of Tampa and the bay. This is the Consolidated Rental Car Center in the south. This is what it'll look like. Your train will pull up. You'll wheel into a great lobby, and Hertz, Avis, and all the guys will be there with your car ready for you. Okay, now a really exciting part of this is, and this is where the George Bean thing comes in. You know, it wasn't easy to get those people movers built, especially back then. It must have been very costly, very expensive, but they said, we're going to do this right, and it's our chance to do it right. I think the vision here is to take this first phase, which the airport has funded, and build it on down to a great multimodal center that'll be called the Tampa International West Shore Station. And it would look like, think about this, Rusty was talking before about the station in Miami, would look like an airline terminal. This terminal would look like an airside at Tampa International Airport. People from Brandon, Tampa, Sarasota, Pasco, Hernando, all around the region, St. Pete, the beaches, can arrive at this terminal, get a boarding pass, check their bags, get a cup of coffee, get a sandwich, and get on a people mover system that'll take them to a terminal and then get on their plane. Now, how cool is that? Can we do this? We can do this. All right? I just heard you, so that means it's happening. Let's go do it. And this can happen in our time. There's no reason it shouldn't, and there's no reason we shouldn't be thinking in these terms. This is what the connection might look like to West Shore. From our station all the way down to West Shore, this is a view looking along Cypress. Now, this is in the West Shore Master Plan. It's a rendering in the West Shore Master Plan. So when you have a rendering in your master plan, it means it's going to happen, right? Okay, so here we go. That concludes my portion. Thank you very much.
Okay, next we have another exciting project in the Tampa Bay area, the Greenlight Pinellas project with Brad Miller, Director of PSTA.
All right, good morning. I'm honored to be here representing a lot of people in the room from Pinellas County. A lot of people have been working on this Greenlight Pinellas plan or to try to move the whole region forward and be leaders in the area. Not for the last 40 years this has been talked about in Pinellas County. There's some people in the room that even parents worked on this before that, long before I got here. So again, what Greenlight Pinellas is all about is a 1% transportation surtax that's going to be on the ballot a year from now in November of 2014. And that will replace the current property tax that Pinellas County residents pay for public transit now. This is an example that I show in Clearwater. The average homeowner would pay about $10 more for a totally different type of transportation system for Pinellas County. The property tax goes away and the sales tax kicks in. Some people, most of the businesses in Pinellas County would actually save money. Now, I've been giving this presentation around the region now for all summer, and this is like my 105th presentation. And a guy recently said to me, he's like, Brad, those are very important numbers on there, but you show it with girls in bikinis. That's very, very distracting. But the reason that we can do this for a very little bit of money is because we've got 1 million residents and we've got 5 million tourists in Pinellas County. And that tax base is spread across people, a third of the people that don't pay anything for the transportation now. So what we're talking about doing, again, is a completely different type of bus system than the folks in Pinellas have seen today. One that is layered with different markets, about 5 times as much service connecting the region over to Tampa. And for the first time, a direct express bus from Clearwater Beach to the Tampa airport, and from downtown St. Pete to the Tampa airport, direct connections there. It includes 6 bus rapid transit lines on our major thoroughfares in Pinellas County. But probably the most important change to the bus system is the level of frequency, how frequent the buses come to each of the stops. If I show you this map today, all these blue lines are high-frequency bus routes through crisscrossing the county. If I show you that map of today, it only has 2 blue lines on it, including those that cross over to Tampa and to the airport. When I talk to people that use the transit system now, this is what they're most excited about: extended hours of service. This picture is obviously not in a northern Pinellas location. North of Ulmerton Road, our buses never see the dark. They never turn on their lights because the buses end at 6:30 in many of our lines. And so all the routes would run at least till 10 p.m. And then our very popular trolley tourist services along the beaches would be dramatically expanded, and those would run even later. I took this picture myself from the back of a Central Avenue trolley bus in downtown St. Pete on its way to the beaches at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. Now, a lot of times those trolleys are used by tourists, but not at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. They're still sleeping, and it's packed. And why is it packed? It's because it's full of workers. People wearing Hawaiian shirts that are going to make the beds and do stuff at trade winds. That's who's riding. There's no parking, as you know, available to most of the employment that work at the hotels and the tourist-oriented businesses along the beaches. And that's what this would do, is provide a connection that people don't have today in many ways, a way to get around Pinellas County in a way they don't have today. Now, the plan also does in the future include a passenger rail system from downtown St. Pete to the highest employment area of Pinellas County that plans on growing in the Gateway area, and then over to Clearwater. And then in the future, our plan does include connections across the Howard Franklin Bridge to Tampa, to the West Shore Multimodal Center that you just heard about, and to downtown Tampa. Now, why was this included? Pinellas County needs to grow again. It needs to have economic growth and development. We are a built-out county, not able to grow maybe in ways other parts of the Tampa Bay can, and we need to find a transportation solution. We really have no more room to expand our roadway system. And so that is what this initiative is about improving Pinellas County for the future. If folks don't think this will help Pinellas County, then they shouldn't vote for it in 2014. So the transit-oriented development potential of that rail system has been studied and planned, and a vision for the future Pinellas County about turning our low-density development that is fully developed the entire county and allowing us to develop upward, which is the only way to go, in more intense developments around those 16 proposed stations. But that also preserves our neighborhoods and our beaches that we're very proud of and don't necessarily want unfettered demand to just grow there. So we're moving forward with this. Again, it's on the ballot for November 2014. It's not going to be easy, no doubt. You know, going out and giving my presentations, people say, well, I've heard of Greenlight Pinellas because I've seen your signs and your little stickers and stuff like that. And they say, are you trying to make me a vegetarian? No. This is about transportation investment and moving our county forward. And it's good that we have a year, and we've been working at this for a while, to get more and more people aware of what's going on, to build the awareness of how mass transit can benefit them, and we'll see how it goes. We'll just keep working on this. So we also know that we have to deliver on this plan, that I and PSTA and the leaders of Pinellas County have to be accountable for this plan. So we are doing everything we can to do our due diligence and to make sure this works, that we have a plan, which I think we have a very good plan, but that we follow it. So we've engaged HNTB and Ernst & Young to review all of our numbers and give another check to develop a 50-year plan for how this plan can be sustainable and affordable over the long haul. So again, that's what the Greenlight Pinellas plan is. There's a lot of people in here that are from Pinellas that are really active in helping with this, and I thank them for that. And then folks that are across the region, I think we could all use your support in getting the word out and talking about this, asking questions now, so that this, by November 2014, more and more people are aware that this is happening. Thank you very much.
Okay, our next speaker is Tom Phillips, Executive Director of Polk Transit. We kind of saw what's happening on one side of Hillsborough. Now we're going to see what's happening to the county on the other side.
Yeah, that's fine. And how do I advance? Perfect. Well, thank you, everyone. And Ray, I think you did a great job setting this up. Brad's got population density. We don't, and really public transportation can work for both. So I think Congressman Micah put it best. This is probably the how you dust yourself off presentation. And so just to set the table, how many of you here are from Polk County? Okay, great, 4. Mission accomplished. So let me just set the table with what we currently have for public transportation in Polk County. We have basically 3 systems. We have the Citrus Connection, that's the Lakeland-based system that connects with the greater Winter Haven system, which is called Winter Haven Area Transit. Worst transit name ever, WAT. And we have the Board of County Commissioners that provide the transportation disadvantaged in the Medicaid program. Now, to put into context our transportation disadvantaged program and how big it is in Polk County, the Brookings Institute recently rated Polk County the 7th most impoverished suburban area in the U.S., which means that 27.8% of our population is at or below the poverty line, which means that 27.8% of our population is eligible for transportation disadvantaged. So what we've done over the last 2 years is, through handshakes, we've decided to coordinate and consolidate all of the public transportation providers in Polk County under the banner of Polk Transit. And so, Mr. Mayor, I was going to recognize you in the first slide, so let me go back. And I'd like to say that Lakeland Mayor Gow Fields has been on the Lakeland Area Mass Transit District Board of Directors for over 20 years, and he truly is the driving force behind public transportation in Polk County and the city of Lakeland. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. So for those of you that don't know, Polk County is 2,009 square miles, which makes it larger than the state of Rhode Island. We have 17 municipalities with distinct needs. And then we have this really interesting situation in Point Siena where we have 85,000 residents that straddle the county line with Osceola, 45,000 of which live in Polk. So how do you go about designing a public transportation system for something that large? So rather than doing what government does best sometimes and going into a back room and creating a plan and coming out and saying, here, trust us, which quite frankly was what happened in 2010, we decided that we were going to take an unprecedented approach and actually ask the citizens, what does good quality transit look like to you? So we held 31 listening sessions in 60 days. We met in all 17 municipalities in Polk County, as well as Point Siena. We held formal listening sessions where we met at city halls and libraries, and we asked folks to come to us and tell us what good quality transit looks like to them. And as passionate as we all are about transit, it just didn't bring out the people like we wanted to. It brought out mayors, it brought city planners, it brought hardcore transit users, so we didn't want to stop there. So we held informal listening sessions in each of the municipalities in Point Siena, where we went out to grocery stores, we went to trunk and treasure shows, we went to garage sales, we went to malls, we walked grocery store aisles, and we asked non-transit users at Starbucks, what does good quality transit look like to you? And the answers were completely different. We talked to over 10,000 residents. We held a business forum where we asked the business community, what does good quality transit look like to you? Because we know your needs are different than the average citizen. We asked the social service community, what does good quality transit look like to you? We handed all this information over to our transportation development planners, and from that, MyRide was born. MyRide is a customized public transportation solution for Polk County that meets each of the public transportation needs of each municipality based on what they need, rather than taking the one-size-fits-all big bus approach that we took in 2010 and trying to expand that across 2,009 square miles. We gave Point Siena a municipal recommendation because of their size, and we created a intra and inter-county on how we link with Tampa and Orlando. I obviously don't have time in 5 minutes, Ray, thank you very much, for allowing me to go over all 19 plans, but I do have a couple that are here. And the MyRide plan for Winter Haven focuses on the economic and social indicators facing Winter Haven, which are obviously the CSX Intermodal Logistics Center expansion and Legoland, Florida. The MyRide solution for the Polytechnic, in addition to the MyRide solution for Lakeland, which focuses on the Polytechnic, looks at linking that as a bedroom community. We also recognize through the process of talking to non-transit dependent users, we need to link with the Tampa and Orlando international airports. So the MyRide plan has an express bus directly from Lakeland to the Tampa International Airport with a stop off at the James Haley VA first, recognizing that we have 60,000 veterans in Polk County who need access to that VA, which means 10% of our population. That'll be $8 each way proposed, with children under the age of 18 riding for free with an accompanying adult. But then our county also expands to the Orlando area, and so we need to look at how we link with the Orlando International Airport. So we have an Orlando International Express bus proposed. That would be $10 each way with children under the age of 18 riding for free with an accompanying adult. But we'd first stop off at Disney and hook up with the Link system. The reason we'd hook up with Disney is not because we want to make it cheaper for families like myself to get to Disney, but because Polk County is the second most populous county for Disney cast members. It's Osceola then Polk, not Osceola then Orange. According to Tom Palmer at the Ledger, at last count, 7,500 individuals live in Polk County but earn their living at Disney. And then one of the big criticisms we've had is that we don't have access for after-hours transportation. And I can't look the voters of Polk County in the eye and ever tell them that it's going to make sense for us to run buses after 10 p.m. and before 5 a.m. But what we've proposed is something that works very well in the suburbs of Chicago and the suburbs of San Francisco, and that's a taxi access program. Between 10:01 p.m. and 5 a.m., we would sell taxi vouchers for $5. Those taxi vouchers would be good for up to $15 on the meter, so that individual can call the provider of their choice, and that second or third shift worker, nurse, or employee can get home with a subsidized taxi ride. If it goes over $15 on the meter, then that person would have to pay for that additional service. One of the large things we've done, and the gentleman from the newspaper left, but was we wanted to prove that we were doing more with the resources that we had preparing to be up for the referendum. So we currently have 12 public-public or public-private partnerships where individuals are able to ride the bus system for free because someone else is paying for their fare. The 20,000 students of Polk State College can now ride the system for free, and by removing the barriers to fares, they went from 2,400 rides a month to 16,000 rides a month. Legoland we'll talk about in a second, and you can see some of our other educational providers here. We have a multimodal partnership with B-Fly Bike Tours. We have a first-of-its-kind housing authority contract to get people into employment and out of public housing. And then we are only the second transit provider in the nation to have a FTA-compliant school contract. So now the 35,000 high school students in Polk County schools can ride the bus system for free because the school board is paying for their fares. What that means is the 11th largest high school population in the United States can now participate in after-school or sporting activities thanks to a funding arrangement with Polk Transit. And our partnership with Legoland really changed everything. As a public transportation provider, we could not have been more irrelevant in Legoland's life when they opened their doors. We were doing an anemic 64 rides a month. After partnering with Merlin Entertainment, where they pay the fares rather than the employees having to pay the fares, last month we did 2,850 rides. And the neat thing is they don't feel good about the public transportation system when they're riding. They feel good about their employer. And that's the relationship that we wanted to have. So Legoland is currently using this as a recruitment and retention model. But none of this matters to the taxpayers if we're not doing more with less. I'm happy to say in the last year, our ridership has increased 27.8%. That's the largest increase in Florida in the last fiscal year. But our costs to operate the buses are down 8.6%. It is $11 an hour cheaper to operate a bus in Polk County this year than it was last year. Thanks to that, we were able to return over $150,000 to the Polk County Board of County Commissioners, who pushed those refunds down to the municipal level. And we're very excited to be on the November 2014 ballot. Our initiative is very close to what Brad's doing with Project Greenlight, and the funding mechanism for the My Ride plan is called the SWAP. And we actually partnered with roads on our 2014 initiative. And that's to move the cost of county roads, bridges, and public transportation away from the exclusive taxation of the home and business owner community and onto a sales tax-based system shared for by tourists, visitors, and everyone equally. We'd reduce the millage rate in Lakeland by 1.5 mils, and we reduced the millage rate in Polk County by 1 mil, and we'd implement a 1-cent sales surtax where half a cent goes towards our county roads and bridges, and the other half a cent goes towards public transportation. 20% of our sales tax comes in from tourists, so we're not quite where Brad is on the spectrum of that. But we talk a lot about what sales tax does and does not include, and we're very excited about House Bill 7007 that provides a 3-year manufacturing exemption from sales tax that will take place in March of 2014. So we can see here Governor Scott visited Stereopac, a organization that is in Lakeland, thanks to Mayor Fields and the Lakeland Economic Development Council. And we can see here that talking about why manufacturing jobs are so important and where we are in the spectrum. So why My Ride, why now? Polk County is the belt buckle between the Tampa and Orlando market. And it's time that we look at our partnership with USF and Lakeland Regional Medical Center to become one of the larger teaching hospitals in the region, and having Florida's 12th independent university, Florida Polytechnic, coming online. It's time that we take our rightful place at the table and provide those vital links between the Orlando and Tampa area. Thank you very much.
Can I use this? Okay, I'm going to time myself now. Tell you what's going on in Hillsborough County. Tom gave a great start to what we're doing here, because the key is we need to engage not the people that come to public meetings. They are important, but we need to engage the larger community, and that's what we're trying to do with Imagine 2040. We've created an interactive way to kind of capture the imagination of the people. We've gotten the news media involved in this effort. It's going to go on to November 11th now, and at that point, we're going to take all the data that we've arrived at and begin working on our transportation and land use plans for Hillsborough County, which are due to be adopted by federal law in December of 2014. So we do have a deadline to do something. So now is the time to start thinking about what the something is. I took over the job of Executive Director of the Planning Commission in 2012, kept my job as MPO Director, and tried to combine the two planning efforts into one planning effort. So far, it has really worked great, and it's been a lot clearer to people what we're trying to do than having two separate and disconnected by time events. A lot can change. What we've done in this exercise is ask people these questions. How do you want to get to work? What kind of house do you think we should accommodate the growth in? It isn't just about ourselves personally. What will this place be like when our children grow up? All the things that we can't control coming up. This is what we look like abstractly today, 1.3 million people. We have a big agricultural component. 87% of our development occurs inside the urban service boundary. Our goal was to have 80%, so we're doing really good there. Unfortunately, bus service only reaches about half of the jobs with very limited hours. High pedestrian fatality rates that we're working on, and we, of course, had a drop in jobs during the recession. We gave the people 3 stories to do, and this is an exercise that a person can do in about 10 minutes on their laptop, iPad. They can do it on a piece of paper. We've already got over 2,500 people that have participated in this. We'd like to get a lot more. We have 3 scenarios: suburban dream, bustling metro, new corporate centers. Different focus on each one. Suburban dream is to expand the urban growth boundary, have more suburban areas, largely a more road-dependent type of scenario. Rebuild major intersections. Bustling metro is to focus more on redevelopment, create new town centers along older commercial strips, both in the urban part of the county and the urban parts of Tampa, and Plant City and Temple Terrace, and obviously more dependent on bus, rail, and circulator shuttles, walk-by connections. New corporate centers, develop new corporate centers on our interstate systems. It interchanges, again, a third scenario to look at. How would we serve this with transportation? Obviously, suburban dreams are very road-oriented. Bustling metro is very transit-oriented. New corporate centers are interstate-oriented. Are we going to pick one of these? Probably not, and I can almost guarantee not, because what we're getting is a shift. So we're going to have pieces of all this in the hybrid plan that we come up with based on the input we're getting from the citizens. Again, that's what largely we see will come out of this. What we've allowed the citizens to do, and I can't really show you here, when they put their information in, it shows how what they picked helps certain things or hurts certain things, what'll be worse, what'll be better in the future. I want to put in a plug now. I hope all of you, even if you don't live in Hillsborough County or just work here, have interaction, go on your computer at some point and just go imagine2040.org, and you can kind of have some fun with this. We call it the gamification of planning. It will react to what you put in and tell you, if you pick this, this is likely to happen. The people go through all this, and then they have to give 1 to 5 stars for the different scenarios, 1 to 5 stars for the different type of housing. And one thing we tell them is the question is not how do you want to live? How do we best accommodate 400 to 600,000 people that are going to come to Hillsborough County by 2040? What is the best way? And we're getting answers. We show them pictures of the different ideas so they kind of understand. Again, we're dealing with people largely that are not that plugged into our processes on a daily basis. These more are just people that vote or have some interest in the community. So it's largely an educational process. Again, giving them choices on jobs. Should we create all the jobs in our existing areas like West Shore and downtown and USF, or redevelop in existing corporate parks, create new office parks, town centers where you mix retail and office space with residential and workspaces, distribution centers? Again, what are the best and worst in your minds? Transportation issues. New express toll lanes, is that a good idea? Smart traffic signals, sidewalks, bike lanes, pedestrian facilities, circulator buses, commuter or light rail, express or bus rapid transit, all things that people need to think about. Funding, these are the choices in funding transportation. Most people don't understand how transportation is funded. What works better? What is something that people would not want to see as much of? We are right here in this phase. Again, it's going to go to November 11th. We tried to extend it. We're thinking of different ways to engage more people in the community, like I'm doing here today, asking you to participate in it. I hand-signed 400 letters yesterday to the largest and most significant employers in Hillsborough County, asking them to get their employees to do this and to do this themselves. So the more input we have from the mass audience and voters we have in Hillsborough County, the better off we're going to be, because we've got to move beyond just civic activists or people involved in the system to the wider range if we want a referendum to pass. And I think you heard that in what Brad said and what Tom said about POKE. Any kind of funding source, regardless if it's a referendum or something else, has to have the support of the larger community. So remember, imagine2040.org. With that, our next speaker is Ronnie Duncan to talk about TBARTA.
Ray, buddy, like you went over 3 minutes, so just saying, you know. Good morning. My name is Ronnie Duncan. I'm chairman of the Tampa Bay Area Regional Transportation Authority, and it's a delight to be here this morning. We have several of our board members in the room. I won't take the time now to acknowledge all of them, but they are a hard-working group of people that have created a lot of what you're going to see here, and so I appreciate their efforts. When Mark Sharp asked me to speak, he knows that I'm not an orthodox speaker in the sense that I usually try to do something different. And in fact, I wanted to share, before I got into my prepared presentation this morning, a short story with you. I had, I have props, yes. I found myself recently having a need to purchase one of these, a toilet seat, okay? Now, and so I went to Home Depot and I said, I need to find the toilet seat section. Well, there is indeed a toilet seat section at the Home Depot. And to my surprise, there are 26 different kinds of toilet seats that they sell at Home Depot. Some are padded, some are hard, some are green, some are blue, some open by themselves, some have a mechanism on that they won't slam, and how many of our kids have slammed the toilet seat in the middle of the night? We've all been there. Some of them almost flush themselves without you doing anything to them. So what's that got to do with transportation? Some of you say nothing. But the real answer to the question is this. If you left Wesley Chapel this morning to come here, you only had one option, one transportation option to get here. If you live in St. Pete Beach and you had to come here this morning, you had one option. You didn't have any real bus options. You didn't have any transit options. You didn't have anything. You had no options other than to get into your car and come and use the roadways to get here. If you're a tourist that lands at this airport and you want to go to the beach, or you want to go to Polk County, or you want to go, if you go anywhere, you don't have options. There's not a bus to Pinellas County going during the day to get you to where you want to go. So this is about options. And the Tampa Bay Area Regional Transportation Authority was conceived about 6 years ago by legislative action of the state legislature. The Tampa Bay Partnership was very instrumental in getting that accomplished, and I appreciate their help, Stu, and your board. And today it is an organization that is charged with not getting in the business of local governments, not coming to Hillsborough County or any place else and telling you how to run your business and where you should plan and what you should do about transportation issues. But in fact, our mission really is to ensure connectivity as we get to the county lines, because, no disrespect, but those of you planners here in Hillsborough and here in Pinellas, and you think about your jurisdictional boundaries, you don't necessarily all the time think about how to get across that jurisdictional boundary into another one. And most of us, if not all of us, travel through many jurisdictional boundaries every day of the week and don't think a darn thing about it. So our job is connectivity. We, just to give you some quick statistics here, we are 7 counties. We encompass 54 cities. We have 2 FDOT districts. We have 6 MPOs, 6 transit agencies. We have 3 airports, 2 major significant ports. We have over 4 million people living in this area. And all this together makes one good food fight at Thanksgiving. Because, as all of you know, and let's be honest, even the elected officials in the room understand, they don't all talk to one another. No one talks to each other. We are the people that talk to each other, and we become, in many respects, an honest broker and a convener to ensure connectivity. As this says, and I'll just highlight some of this, we're not just about moving people, though, but we're connecting the region together for freight, for goods and services. And we're providing, with our partners, not ourselves, but in conjunction with our partners, the options so that we too may have 26 options one day, not just one, to get people around. First thing we did was to create a master plan. The master plan, the map on the right is not it's not the daily special at Bella's, the spaghetti model. It really is, in fact, a balanced multimodal system. And each one of those different colors represent corridors and different modes of transportation. And I won't go into all this because of the time. Why is that important? Well, as I said earlier, we have about 4 million residents, 3.3 million jobs at stake here in this region. Every day of the week, 750,000 cars or daily trips occur between the three counties. Congestion is increasing. I don't think it's stopping. I don't think it's slowing down. It's increasing. And the estimate is that it's going to be 3 times as bad in 25 years as it is today. And you all have seen and heard, and you know this intuitively, it takes forever and a day to get any transportation project done. So if we don't start it today, we're not going to be able to accommodate that congestion. Very simple. Costs are increasing, revenues are going down. You've heard that. Revenue sources for funding for transportation deliverables almost drying up in many cases. And yesterday, the Tampa Bay Partnership had a presentation from some folks out of Washington talking about where federal funding is going or is not going, depending upon how you look at it. And clearly, we understand that transportation means economic vibrancy and dynamic growth. Growth in the right way, not in the wrong way. The master plan includes a transit network, yes, working with all our transit agency partners, a freight network, working with CSX, the ports, a roadway network, public engagement, and the rest that you see here. One of the most important things, though, I think we sometimes forget about these transportation improvements. They are significant because it helps to reduce air quality issues. It makes us a more environmentally friendly place to work and to play and to grow families. In 2013, or earlier this year, I should say, the board, in conjunction with all of our partners, in conjunction with our economic development partners, we developed a list of regional priorities. And I'm proud to say that economic development groups like the Tampa Bay Partnership and in local governments have adopted most of these. And these are the priorities that are now taken to the legislative delegation for this upcoming session so they can help us. I need to tell you, these are not pie-in-the-sky projects. These are not 40-year development projects, sir. These are projects that have legs. The top one, the Roosevelt Connector, that's a Pinellas County project. It connects US 19 through 118th Street and connects it to I-275. It's fully designed. Money's already been put away for it. That project is going to happen and happen soon. The extension of Suncoast Parkway up through Citrus County, that's about 60% designed as we speak, and FDOT is continuing to work on that. A lot of the right-of-way has already been purchased. The managed lanes, you heard the district secretary talk about managed lanes on 54 and 56 in Pasco County. That's a real project. They've got a proposal in-house that they're evaluating. They went out and have an RFP on the street that I think toward the end of the month you're going to actually be able to award that project. That's happening. Express lanes on I-275. The secretary spoke about that as well. Tonight, once again, the Howard Franklin Bridge discussion. It's open to the public. It's here in this room, I think, as a matter of fact, from 5 to 7. Come and make your voice known about the Howard Franklin Bridge replacement because it's ahead of schedule. It's ahead of schedule. And then, of course, you can't talk about this regional significance here and regional dynamic economy without talking about Tampa International Airport. And Joe Lopano is a great leader and talked about the Intermodal Center that they've designed and are working toward here as we speak. I won't go into the town hall meeting numbers because it'll take too much time. But more importantly, we've done a lot of outreach to see what people are looking for. Where do they want to go? Not just designing something that we think they want to go. Where do they want to go? We hear about connections to the airport. Everyone wants to be able to get to the airport, and they want options. They don't want to have to drive their car, or in the case of tourists, they don't want to take a $92 cab ride from the beaches to the airport to get back on their plane. That's a true story. They suggest that we work with the CSX to use existing rail lines, and that discussion is underway. Expanding local bus service. We are fortunate to have great transit operators in this community, and we're working with them as partners to assist them as they look at crossing county lines and, again, connecting people. Safety is a big issue. Regional transportation needs to come sooner than later, and that was one of the strongest comments that we've heard out there. And look at other cities. Lessons learned. Let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's find out what worked elsewhere, what didn't work elsewhere. Let's do what they've done, and let's do it better. And the last one is an interesting one. Some people are not yet convinced that rail is really the solution. And that's something we're going to have a continued discussion on as we go forward here. Our next steps, and I'll wrap it up here, Ray, our next steps here as we continue this process is to continue to talk to people, be a partner. Be a partner with other transportation agencies and authority throughout the region. Engage the private sector, incredibly important. And again, ask everybody where they want to go, what they're trying to accomplish in their transportation daily activities. And look at non-traditional methods of implementing transportation solutions, such as, and you've already heard it from several presentations this morning, such as looking at the private sector coming in and being involved in taking the lead, rather than letting government do it the same old way they've always done it. So these are things that we and many others are all working together on, but we are the connecting entity that pulls all this together, and much of what you've seen this morning is in this master plan. With that, I thank you for your time, and Mark, the toilet seat's for you, sir.
Actually, I wanted to ask Ronnie if I could borrow the toilet seat. I just think that's a great thing. And I think what we have to understand is we need multiple solutions, and our next three presenters are going to have very different ideas from some of the things that we've talked about already. Our first is Joe Wagner, our Executive Director of the Sports Authority, the Expressway Authority.
It's all right. You're in a hurry. I understand. Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Sharp, for inviting us here today. Implementing, funding, operating, how can we make this happen sooner, better? That's our job. That's how we look at ourselves at Tampa Hillsborough Expressway Authority. We are actually developing a new transit concept called bus toll lanes as a financial mechanism that can help develop and pay for premium transit and express lanes. Transit and highway agencies typically look at each other as competitors for funding. But the Tampa Hillsborough Expressway Authority and the Hillsborough Area Regional Transit are working together to look at a new mobility concept that would pay for transit and express lanes in a different way. The basic idea of the bus toll lane concept is an express toll lane as a fixed guideway that gives first priority to transit buses. Once the buses get rolling, the remaining road space is sold to drivers willing to pay a toll. Those express toll lanes would be price managed so that the lanes are maintaining highway speed at all times. The true creativity of the concept comes in a public partnership approach to capital funding. Federal transit grants would help to pay for the construction of the express lanes. In return, toll revenue from cars using those lanes would help cover the cost of operation and maintenance of the premium transit service. Basically, transit would help cover the cost to build the lanes, have first priority in the lane, and share in the revenue from the cars paying tolls to use the lane. Such an approach addresses the low fare box recovery of transit systems. Typically, transit fares cover only 30% of their operation and maintenance cost. By investing in the BTL concept, transit could potentially fund all of their operations and maintenance costs in the express lanes and add money later to grow transit as congestion grows in your community in the future. It's a means of creating additional people moving capacity and mobility, and doing it in a financially sustainable manner. I pitch the concept as giving transit a new fare box. In May, We released a feasibility study of this concept based on hypothetical BTL networks for the Tampa metro area. The estimated transit use and congestion savings were quite significant. Additionally, the revenue forecasts were very impressive. In all three networks modeled, the tolls covered all of the operating and maintenance costs of the transit system and generated revenue to grow future transit service in the years to come. Why should we care about this? This slide you're looking at is a Debarta chart that shows over 200 miles of planned managed lanes in our region. Consider this. The I-4 project that was just spoken of by our friend from Orlando. That's a 20-mile project. It has 4 lanes of express toll lanes built into it. The DOT has put it out for a P3 concessionary bid. They prepared traffic and revenue forecast. The 30-year revenue forecast on that 20-mile section of roadway is $4 billion. That's a lot of money. It's an opportunity. This is what we're presenting here. With the BTL concept, you cover the same operating and capital costs while preserving revenue to invest in growing the future transit system. This chart shows the possible funding approach that we're discussing here. A typical Federal Transit Administration New Starts grant is 50% federal and 50% state local match. Here, we've added toll financing as a new source of local matching funds. Another 2 things happen here. One is we've greatly reduced the local match that's got to be developed by the state and local agencies. But 2, we've increased our ability to be even more competitive if we want to pursue these grants at the federal level. This chart shows how that affects use of future revenue from this system. In this particular network, we forecast about $3.5 billion over the 30-year period. What this chart shows that in our analysis, it covered all the bond cost, it covered all the operation and maintenance costs of the lanes, and it covered all the transit costs, the operation and maintenance costs of the transit you see here. But critically, is it also left over, because of your lower forms of financing you're using here, $1.5 billion to grow transit in the future when congestion grows in the out 15 to 30 years. And it's new money that you can use to grow that service without having to go back and ask for a tax base increase. It comes from the system, it comes from user fees, who want people who make a choice to use those lanes or use that premium bus services out there. We are currently working to submit a proposal for the Florida Department of Transportation and then to the Federal Transit Administration for a pilot project within Hillsborough County. I believe the bus tolling concept gives metro areas around the country a new and different funding model. Practically all the revenue from these managed lanes will come from our community. We believe at THEA that we should work to take advantage of this opportunity because that's what we see this as. It is a real opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, we're down to our last 2 speakers. We're going to find out what's going on in Pasco County with some more creative ideas on how to address our transportation issues. Richard Gehring is here, Planning and Development Administrator in Pasco County.
Good morning. In Pasco, department controls the MPO and the function for all planning and development and all economic development activity in this county of 500,000 acres and 500,000 people. Our chair from our MPO can't be here because our MPO is running a meeting parallel to this event, but 2 of our commissioners, Jack Mariano and Catherine Starkey, are here. This is a facility that we call the Northern Loop, and it is a regional resource that will link together a critical amount of movement in our area. And what it does is gives us the ability, you've heard about managed lane systems to the south, which would be using the interstate corridor or the Suncoast corridor as just described. Well, how do you link them in the north? And so this is the idea of a Northern Loop that would occur in the 5456 corridor, and it can be extended. The real goal is to link the interstate system to the Suncoast system, but it also could be extended over to the 19 corridor into North Pinellas. And more creatively, it could be extended, Mayor Fields, if he's still in the room, over to Lakeland. It came across to 301 and then jumped to the 98 corridor. It could come down. So it's a very dynamic tool for utilizing those dollars. And the managed lane concept is dealing with emerging Regional strategy, which you're hearing about in all the other presentations. It's an alternative 6. TBARTA did a study with District 7 and Pasco County and created 18 alternatives to what to do with this unique roadway. And out of those 18, alternative 6 was an elevated 4-lane toll facility that could also handle BRT. There's general support for this to establish a revenue potential, and we're doing a study with URS to do that. Our Speaker of the House is from Pasco. Will Weatherford says, go on the transportation offensive. And that's been his theme. And I think we're trying to do that as a purpose of this meeting. Right behind that, Secretary Prasad came to the TBARTA meeting and said, think big. And that was certainly a key component we're moving here. FDOT wants to accelerate 3P projects. You're hearing a lot about them. There's special conferences going on to promote them. Our Chairs Committee has ranked this project number 5 regionally, and you also just saw that in the TBARTA ranking, I think it was number 4. Economic development interests support this, and the press and most of the media references that we can move into a big league mode by working on this kind of facility. It's buildable because you can do a managed lane system on segmented precast, elevate it off the roadway, build it down the median, and put in an existing facility that's already handling traffic. Over time, you can also add it as a functional element where there are 6 lanes of general purpose lanes at grade, and there's 4 lanes elevated that are doing the express movement. And that's the toll elevated, and then you balance the flows in that toll by adding the potential for BRT. You've really constrained my window here on my slide box, but however your system is set up, this is BRT ready. You don't get the link of a system for bus rapid transit. But this framework of putting that type of facility across this corridor, because it is a critical element in Pasco County into the region. This is our region, and for good or for bad, or for whatever leadership issues, it is 20-some miles from the 580 corridor to Hillsborough Avenue out to I-4, which is the only cross-region connector that goes from coast to the county line. And you have to go that far north. There is no east-west movement. There's pieces, Fowler-Fletcher-Pear. You can scream along on the Lutz Lake Fern Road, but there is no way to move in this system unless this system is put in place. And so right now we have traffic in New Tampa going north, getting on this road to come across to the west to go south into West Shore. So it's a complete circular system utilizing a roadway that's only been open for less than 10 years, but is now going to level service F in numerous sections, particularly between the interstate and State Road 41, or US 41. So this concept extended on to 301 and ultimately moving farther to the east is the key. But can we link the interstate to 589 to the Suncoast? That particular roadway in between there, our long-range needs list is 20 lanes would have to be built to handle projected traffic. We can't build 20 lanes. This type of facility is the only logical way to do that. An RS&H study, as I said, was put together, and this was the framework for it to link from the east to the west, and we've expanded it and put it out into a broad concept. We did an aggressive program with the Urban Land Institute last year and put the whole concept of this into a community dialogue. What was exciting about it was that a lot of people showed up. We did a tour of the entire corridor, but the most important tour participant was the Secretary of Transportation. So Secretary Prasad arrived and made the point that in public-private partnerships, which he wants to advance, and in facilities for being able to lease the roadway, which is what's driving the rail concept that we heard earlier, it's what's driving a lot of the connectors that are being discussed, we could come up with a way that I was thinking of getting something moving fast in 3 or 4 years. He said, I can go and put this into a lease package in 3 or 4 months. So the framework for this right now is moving forward, and it is an idea of how Pasco can bring an economic development framework to its county. We are the highest commuting population leaving the county every morning. Like half the employment population gets up and drives south. So building a system that will give us the ability to link our long-range transportation plan to the TBARTA plan. We need this capacity now, not 25 years from now. We have major segments that are failing and going to level service F. 3P is a real opportunity. The developer interest and studies underway in a special program we're doing with URS. Construction prices are at their lowest, and as you know, they are ramping up, so time is of the essence, and interest rates are low and will ramp up. So given this framework, we've put together a way that as a county the decision-making of the MPO, the FDOT District 7, the TBARTA role, and eventually our entire planning program can get the toll data that we need. But while we're doing that, which is going to be an 8-month effort of putting together this study that's a joint effort between DOT and Pasco County, we have had the opportunity of a major unsolicited response. The alternative 6 was to go above the 6 general purpose lanes with a special purpose 4-lane facility elevated. That particular facility at 21 and 14 cents a mile has the potential to carry volumes that could give us, from instead of 80,000, could give us 160,000 trips a day in the corridor. That particular framework is at standard expressway toll facility rates. If it's done with congestion pricing, it could generate significantly more. Just running that set of numbers on the 14 cents and the 21 cents, what's exciting is this can throw off $50 million a year in revenue stream. That $50 million a year revenue stream, which is sort of a back of an envelope number, is what generated interest, so that now we have a group of parties interested in moving on this particular project. We're doing an 8-month effort with DOT to refine our toll level. URS is the toll and study model and design firm for the Turnpike Authority. This will be an 8-month effort, but expediting that, out of the blue came a team filing in June with creating a 60-day note that the secretary here in District 7 covered as a process. This team formed out is PCL, which is the major construction arm currently have built Selman, who's building the current port connector over to I-4, and has also built all kind of major segmented precast in the area, linked with a funding entity, which at this point in the first unsolicited bid is Guggenheim, major global capital player, and the design team is Parsons Brinkerhoff. So that's the team that came forward. They put their name in the bid as International Infrastructure Partners, and right now there's a 60-day response that commenced on July 23rd, and on October 23rd is the due date, and then there'll be a selection process for that. So that's our story. It's underway. It's got potential, and we'll see some selection. And while we were trying to expedite it into a 3 or 4 year period, if the 3P process can work, we will see this as a major new tool to take a state arterial like 54, 56 and deliver it as a major toll facility. So when you're driving from Orlando and you get to Kathleen, you get the option of South Tampa Bay, take I-4, North Tampa Bay, take this corridor. That's what this could emerge into. It would be a major game changer in handling our growth conditions, and we're very excited about it. Thank you very much.
Okay, we have our last presenter, our friends from Sarasota Manatee County, Mike Howe, who is my MPO counterpart down in Sarasota Manatee, talking about US 41.
Commissioner Sharp and his diligent assistant, Mary Hoppy, I just want to thank you for your hard work, along with Ray Shermonti and the Hillsborough County area, and Pinellas and Pasco, who are sponsors. You know, about in the 1940s, if you wanted to go to Miami from Tampa, most likely you were going to travel on US 41. Not a lot of other great choices. In any event, and it took a long time. And of course, then we had the born of I-75. But what I'm here to talk about today is something that we're excited about. In 2010, when we were doing our long-range transportation plan, the two-county, 700,000 area of Sarasota Manatee, 15-member board of elected officials decided that we're going to do something. We're going to reinvest in that scenic highway, that, heritage trail, if you will, that, quite frankly is pretty old. And it was getting older. And it's a two-county road, but my goodness, it has a lot of businesses on it. It has a lot of people that use it every day, because basically every community has a spine, and the spine in the Sarasota Manatee area is Interstate 75, of course, from, you know, a regional transportation network, but the actual corridor, the urban, you know, corridor spine is US 41. So what we decided to do was the money that we get each year, the discretionary dollars, if you want to use that, you know, term, of federal and state dollars from FDOT, we wanted to allocate that to reinvestment into multimodal improvements on the US 41 spine, which is so important. And we're talking about 7 jurisdictions that are impacted here. Let me go through this. In 2035, it's $2.5 million a year from Manatee that's being allocated off the top, you know, before you do any capacity improvements, and $4.42 million in Sarasota. To boil that down to the type of investment we're talking about, over a 5-year period, we're talking about over $30 million that's going to be reinvested in this very critical urban corridor. And when we say reinvested, what are we talking about? As I said before, it goes all the way from Palmetto through Bradenton, through Sarasota, through Venice, down to Northport, which is now, if you weren't aware, the largest city in the 2-county area is the city of Northport now. But this corridor is not only important from its heritage, but it's also, you know, the focus of a lot of efforts that we've done. We have an interlocal agreement between Sarasota and Manatee Transits that people can get on a bus in Palmetto and go all the way to Northport and back without changing. In other words, our buses interconnect between the 2 counties. We also have a brownfield project that is helping reinvest the communities along this corridor that we got from the Environmental Protection Agency of $1 million brownfield. It's been quite successful in helping put businesses back into commerce. Anyways, the criteria is very simple. You need to connect, you know, mobility or address congestion and help, you know, help this corridor survive and thrive. Must be appropriate to other land uses, obvious. Must have local support. Safety for vulnerable users. You know, Florida has, you know, unfortunately a reputation, probably because of our climate, of, you know, being dangerous and everything. So this is something that, you know, we're very concerned about in this particular program. And finally, I think the main thing is that you need to reinvest and you need to feed the system. You know, we can't just build things or we can't just expand things without taking care of them. And I think that's the effort that we're doing right now. So reinvest in your urban cores, because I think it's critical to pedestrians, you know, bus people, bus transit riders, and anyone that really wants to use that urban core. Thank you very much.
That's the end of our formal presentations, but I want to take time for questions now. Some of us will stay around if we don't get to all of them. I want to thank Mary Hoppy for all the work that she did. I was actually a little worried about her health there for a while. And also my staff from the MPO and for doing this. And I want to thank Mark Sharp, my MPO chair, for making this happen. When it started out, it kept evolving, and we were all a little nervous. And I think we've decided it takes 3 people to harness Mark's energy, Eric, Mary, and myself. I was also warned, Mark doesn't know this, by one of his former aides when I said I wanted Mark to be the chair of the MPO. And she goes, "Are you crazy? You know, you don't know what you're asking for." But you know what? I got a lot of energy, and that's exciting for me. So he's been a great chair, and I'm very excited about the next year as we work on our plan. With that, Are there any questions on all of these things we heard today? I think we all elevated our knowledge a lot. Yes.
Yeah, I always wondered, why is light rail considered to be better at generating economic development over a bus rapid system covering the same route?
Because light rail is more permanent and people make decisions based on that's going to stay there. I will tell you, my dream is someday I want to live in a community where I can walk a block and get on some kind of rail system and not ask my son to drive me around, and hopefully not even have to go into the nursing home to stay in my own house. I live in a community that happens to be a couple blocks away from a railroad track right now. Because it's more permanent in the long term. I've lived in a city like Chicago, and my cousins would make decisions on where they bought houses based on how far it was from the rail station. Buses, I don't think, have that permanence, and that's what the issue is there. But I don't think any one technology, buses are appropriate for certain things. I think what we learned today is that it's all about choices. I love the toilet seat model. I mean, everybody's got a different thing that they do for different kinds of trips. Sometimes you take a bus. There is no one solution. When people say it isn't a solution. It's
But
just
I bet
one
there
of
wasn't
many.
a great difference in price in all those toilet seats, though, like there are between light rail and bus, though.
Right, but there's different kinds of rail, too. There's commuter rail like Orlando did, which is much cheaper than light rail. Okay.
What do you think we can do to convince people that basically roads aren't free, and that when you go with mass transit, that's not just an extra cost on the top, and making the disconnect there?
That isn't easy to do, and that's what we learned from the last referendum. When you did our post-referendum study, the average voter, in all honesty, I hate to say it, has no clue how transportation is funded, and they do kind of think roads are free. Or they think that the gas tax covers the entire road, which it doesn't, probably even cover half in most cases. I think it's just the education. One of the things we found out is people think when gas goes up, the amount of taxes that the government gets, they think that the gas tax goes up too. I'm telling you, it was an eye-opener. We've got to do a better job of educating people about how things work, but the good thing is, in all the studies we did, 85% of the people understood that there was a problem that we needed to do something about, so we're not looking for a problem. They get it. It's the question is, how do you convince them logically in a way that they believe in the solution that you can do something, and that's what's the difficult part.
Question for the district secretary. Michael Moore showed a slideshow to T. Barter back about 3 or 4 months ago. In it, it showed that the gas tax, which as you say is unsustainable, shows $200 million of that gas tax money is being diverted. Some of it's education, service fees, administration, fish and wildlife, agriculture. What can we in this room help you to do to get that money back into transportation gas tax? So when we go look the voters in the eye to tell them that we need more help because our gas tax is going to cover it, but we can look them in the eye and say, look, all your gas tax is going where it's supposed to go. What can we do to help you?
Well, you can talk to your legislator, first off, and let them know that it's important to you as not only a taxpayer, but as a transportation professional. I will tell you that we thought we almost had it as the DOT. Our package from last year, the last legislative session, included taking those tag and title fees and bringing it back to transportation. Unfortunately, some other items got included into that bill, the Miami Dolphins Stadium and some other tag-on items that ultimately killed the transportation bill. The department is currently preparing our next legislative request right now. We start very early in that process. It will be something that we're going to pursue in the future. I didn't give you the long version of this presentation today, but one of the things that we do have to be very aware of, we have legislators in our state that are trying to reduce tag and title fees back to its, I think, 2009 level, if my memory is correct, which would pretty much eat up that $200 million that got diverted. So it wouldn't be helping any of the general fund agencies, and it certainly wouldn't help transportation. Those are other things that we need to be thinking about. Is I'm not saying taxes are good or bad. I'm just saying we need to realize that there's a whole bunch of different facets here that are out there, and we didn't even really get deep into the MAP 21 issues. MAP 21 expires September 30, 2014. As a nation, we spend about $39 billion in transportation, of which the gas tax, the federal gas taxes only cover about 27 billion of it, so the general fund is covering about 11 to 12 billion annually every year in this country. MAP 21 basically borrowed money from the future to keep the funding levels at the rate it's going right now. When 2014, or September 30, 2014 comes, that 27 billion that you're seeing is going to drop to like 12 to 14 billion that's going to be available for funding purposes of transportation, because we'll have to pay back what we've already borrowed, quote unquote. Has a drastic impact on the amount of federal dollars that's going to be available to states across this country. There's all kinds of minefields out there when it comes to funding transportation that the general public does not understand. And we as transportation professionals need to get out there and start spreading this message so that they fully understand not only how is transportation funded, but some of our liabilities that we currently have out there. I was telling some folks yesterday that you got to give our legislature a lot of credit. From a federal perspective, only about 25% of our transportation funding relies on federal dollars. 75% is based off of state-funded dollars that come to the transportation. So if the federal pot does reduce to that level, we as the state of Florida are in far better shape than most states across this country. I've worked in 2 other DOTs, and I can tell you that their funding levels, state, federal matches, 80% about federal and only about 20% on the state side. So when you talk about the reduction in those federal funds, it's going to kill some of these other states. So Florida, we got to give our legislature a lot of credit. I don't want to slam these guys because they've done a great job over the years protecting our investment. The Florida roads generally rank between 1 to 5 nationally. We're some of the best roads in the country. Our bridges this year just ranked #1 across the country. And that's because of how we as Floridians have put our packages together. So I don't want to throw these guys under the bus, but yes, we do have issues out there that we can, lobby for and improve on. I want to make one correction. The Howard Franklin Bridge meeting is in the Marriott in West Shore. It's not here. Just so those folks that may want to come back here, you want to come to the right spot. If you come here, you're going to be you'll be a person of a few. So.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Thanks,
My
Paul.
name is Doreen DiPolito, and I'm a City Clearwater Council member and a board member for Pinellas MPO. And thank you for having us all here together. Mark, you did a great job along with your staff. I want to say all the presentations were absolutely wonderful, but I want to focus more importantly on the fact that what I heard today was P3s. So everyone here in this room as leaders, I encourage all of you to go back to your communities and work together. I mean, fantastic, Polk, your presentation with Legoland and the school system, awesome. I think we all need to leave here today with a lot of great advice that came out of this room and start working. I love the fact that we're working together regionally on our MPOs, and let's take P3s to the next level and help Tallahassee and those that are working on all those different initiatives up there. Thank you so much.
Okay, any other questions? Yes, Ed.
Great. First of all, I think this is fabulous. I would suggest that the partnership in T-Barda and Hillsborough turn this into an annual event and broaden it. I think it's spectacular, and you could probably use more time. And it's really super. And what do people think about that? Is that a good thing? Yeah. Commissioner Sharp, Mr. Rokel, great inspiration. Thank you. Advertisement next year. Let's show a bunch of high-speed ferry on the local plans, regional plans. We're getting very close on that. And for those that aren't used to this notion, I think it's very real, very cost-effective. Joe Lopano said, how do you can get from St. Petersburg to the airport? We looked at that route, and honestly, 4 boats at $35 million capital cost is equivalent of 1 lane of interstate in 30 minutes run time. Not saying that should happen, but it should be thought about. Now my question. The managed lane thing was real cool. And we talked a lot about big issues. What I haven't heard today and don't know where it frankly stands is what's the story of downtown interstate? The reconstruction and malfunction, I-275 and I-4, It seems that if managed lanes are going to happen, that needs to happen. And maybe if you get all aboard to the airport, maybe that happens. And I'm just like, where are we on that? It's interesting for those of us who've been involved in transportation stuff for a long, long time. I saw David Mechanic out there. We're like, that's interesting that that's kind of fallen off the discussion. So and I talked to 2 other people about that, so I said I promised that I would raise that issue back up to see, you know, kind of what's going on with it and how does that all fit in to everything we're doing. Thank you.
When you're talking about the managed lanes project, as I mentioned earlier, there's definitely some pieces that have to come first. You saw that Howard Franklin is a major priority for the department. State Route 60, 275, Memorial Veterans, all that whole connection is a major piece of it. We really can't get too deep into the managed lanes concept until that's taken care of. But when we talk about the managed lanes, and you're talking about the West Shore station, possibly a downtown station, and what happens with the interchange between I-4, 275, all of that would be parts and parcel of how we would address the managed lanes concept. We realize there's some work that needs to be done there, but until you get some of these other pieces put in place, it would be moving across the county more or less in a sequence, unless of course we can convince folks that there's a P3 that would bring that forward quicker. But in reality, you can't even, like I say, you can't really get serious about a lot of these issues until we take care of these 2 major pieces. And if you flip over to the Pinellas side, that 118th Roosevelt connection in the gateway is another big piece. Those are what I call the big 3 right now. Once I get those big 3 kind of taken care of, a lot of these other things can take off. Whether we've reserved a rail corridor along the I-4 275 corridor, so if that were something that would want to happen in the future, everything we're talking about, it's not like these are exclusive. Those are in conjunction so we can maximize the opportunity of choice for the community. But what it really takes is dollars. Let's not kid ourselves. We heard what's happening in Orlando, and you heard my number on managed lanes. If I did everything on that screen, I mean, folks laugh at me, but when my second month here, I walked into the Secretary Prasad's office and said, "Hey, Secretary, $5 billion and I go away." That's exactly what he said to me too. So what we got to do is we got to figure out how we're going to accomplish that. How are we going to get there? That's what it comes down to.
Okay, we're going to have one more question from Kevin Thurman of Connect Tampa Bay.
I'm going to have to make you get up again, Secretary Steinman. But my question actually goes to long-term commitments to projects, and a lot of this comes down to P3, a lot of this comes down to politics, I understand. But what can we do to help you get money for long-term commitments? For instance, on Sunrail, the documentary stamp tax, which used to be distributed across the entire state, is now dedicated partly towards their operating costs for the first 8 years. There's capital that's purchasing right of way that the state did for long term for those projects. As we look to fix guideway transit in Hillsborough and Pinellas counties, what can we do to convince the state to make a similar commitment to this region?
As the new guy in the room, I will tell you the biggest issue that I found when I came to the Tampa Bay area is that I would go around and I'd ask people, what's our biggest issues in the Tampa Bay area? Where's transportation got to go? And as I was going to the different counties and as I was talking to different leaders, I would get a different answer no matter who I talked to. Nobody had the same priority list. And if you want legislators, if you want Tallahassee to commit to anything, we got to speak with one voice. From a regional perspective, we need to figure out what's our priorities. And that doesn't mean that everyone's going to get it all at the same time. But we need to figure out how to grow the system. And we need to understand how to do that so that we're talking in one voice. Basic conversations that I've had secondhand with other folks that when they talk to our federal congressional delegation is they're saying the same thing. When you heard about the Miami Intermodal Center, when I took a trip down to the Miami-Fort Lauderdale area when I first got here to talk to the leadership down there, not only from the DOT but from the business side, we had a freight summit down there and I was talking to the business leaders. in that area, and I said, how did you guys pull this off? I was trying to figure out, because they're very lockstep down in the Miami-Fort Lauderdale area. No matter who you talk to, you get the same priorities. I says, how do you guys do that? He says, Paul, I'm telling you how this works, is we as a community, the greater community, we develop our priorities as a region, and we get them all on the same page, and everybody's in lockstep. So when we go to DC, or we go to Tallahassee, or wherever we're going, we can convince people we're on the same page. If we're going to go try to recruit business, we can show that we're on the same page. And they know no matter who they talk to, they're going to get the same priorities. And then once it gets here, then we internally fight about what community is going to get this business or how we're going to do that. He says, but we get it here first. The fight doesn't start happening until we get it here. And the biggest thing I've seen about our area, no disrespect to folks, is that we fight publicly first. And quite frankly, what business wants to come to an area where people are fighting with each other? What legislator is going to stick his neck out to bring money to the area for fighting with each other? It's really that simple. That's at least my perspective. We've got to pick regional priorities.
We're going to have one more question, just a comment. We are capable of coming together. We came together to get the crosstown connector. All 7 counties picked it as their #1 priority to get the stimulus money because they were convinced that the Port of Tampa was important to the entire region. So we can do it when we put our mind to it. So we just need to do it more. Yes.
And it's not a question, but there was so much talk here today about the P3s that I want to make sure that all the elected officials and other interested parties know that November 6th in Orlando, the Florida Chamber is having a workshop on P3s, and I'm going with my administrator and some other staff, so you may want to sign up for that.
Great, thank you very much. Mark, why don't you come up and close out the meeting today?
I just want to first briefly thank Mary Hoppy for all the work you've done on this project, and Eric in my office. But I want to make clear that this is not the stop. This is not the end. This is just a start. We have so much work to do, but the speakers who came here from Florida East Coast to Central Florida and all across the region, I've heard some of the most exciting, dynamic presentations today, and I'm more convinced that if we do work together, there's nothing that can stop us. And so with that, I say, enjoy your day, and let's get to work. Thank you.